Love Toji. How could you tell? What's up, guys? Alapunto here, and here we are to do a live reaction to Broken Ronin's Why We Love Toji. And I'll admit, I'm a little bit excited. Now, I don't really talk on Toji that much, mainly because he hasn't been he's been relative in the narrative recently in terms of the manga, but I think genuinely the last time he's been a character in the narrative and not just a reference or an offhand comment or a Maki comparison is near the end of Shibuya, which is over 100 chapters ago at this point, which in real time is darn near 3 years. So I don't necessarily talk about Toji all that much. The most recent big discussion thing I did on Toji was why I thought Kashimo beat him. Now my thoughts have changed on that. So Toji, he's definitely rising in stocks right now, specifically through Maki and stuff like that. But it's more on a scaling front. I really talk about Toji on a character front, even though I think he's one of my favorite characters. Pretty inarguably, I'd say a top 5 character within JJK. Actually, is he? What do you think? Gojo, Kenjaku, Itadori. Yeah, Toji probably up there. But overall, I really do like Toji. So let's see what Broken Ronin has to say on why we, not I, but we love Toji. Let's see. Editing me. Ready. 3, 2, 1, go.
Toji is one of the most...
I just realized I was about to listen to a video without my headphones on. Greetings. What's up, guys? Alapunto here. And as you know, got it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. You know, worst comes to worst, it's Broken Ronin. Broken Ronin, I swear, out of the many videos of his I've watched, I don't think there's been a single bad one. I legit, there's not even been a single okay one. They're all great. I seriously. So, I got it on me, but maybe I should just draw it right now. But let's see. Let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into why we love Toji.
Toji is one of the most beloved characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, despite the actions
by a long shot too. Toji is realistically, there are 3 characters who sort of transcend the fandom within JJK in particular. There are a couple characters in a bunch of series that transcend their respective fandoms, but the 3 characters that typically transcend their fandoms are Toji, Gojo, and Sukuna. And for reference, Toji is only an active part of the narrative for, I'd say, solidly, in terms of just simple screen and panel time, Toji's an active part of the not nearly, it is a 230 chapter narrative at the time of recording. He's only in it for maybe 10%, 15%. You got to think about that. Bro's barely in the plot. He's not even that prominent in the Gojo's past arc. And the Gojo's past arc isn't even that long. That's why the anime can only stretch it to 4 episodes. The Gojo's past arc is super duper short. And then he has a really short amount of screen time in Shibuya. So he's probably being generous, an active character in the narrative for 15, 20% of it. And even then, that's being super duper generous. But he is an extremely popular character way before the anime came out. Way before the anime came out, Toji was talked about. Toji was lauded. Toji was out there. People love Toji. And if I had to take a guess before Ronin goes into why people love Toji, 1, I think it is his design. Toji Fushiguro has a really solid design. I think one of Gege's best works in terms of designing a human character. The only characters, specifically human, that I'd say are more recognizable and also attention grabbing in comparison to Toji are Sukuna when he's in either of his vessels, or Gojo. That's the thing. Everyone else kind of falls beneath that area, and there are multiple reasons why. Toji's physique is pretty outstanding. Not gonna lie, there's a reason he's a bunch of people's gym motivation, and also for the fact that he's one of the few people to have that kind of physique. Even characters like Gojo and Sukuna have relatively slim builds. Sure, they're still muscular, don't get me wrong. Gojo could bench press me twice, but that doesn't mean that they stand out like that. Meanwhile, Toji, design-wise, has this really out there, a big, beefy man with that perfect Dorito shape in terms of the upper body, and you can tell he doesn't skip leg day. Obviously, bro's just built well. And in a series that's based around sorcery, magic fights, where even our super strong main character is relatively lean, and by relatively, I mean super duper lean. Itadori is what? I think he has Didn't Gege state he has like 2% body fat or something? Like, bro is super duper lean. Toji is the exception. So naturally within the world of sorcery, he's going to stand out. And speaking of standing out, he also stands out within the world of sorcery because like, he literally is the exception within the world of sorcery. Until Maki gets her awakening and has her cursed energy just whoop by Mai before Mai, well, goes goodbye. Toji is the only character in the entire series of any sort of relevance to have 0 cursed energy. Not a little bit, not a whiff, not a taste, not a marginal amount, 0. 0. That's like a character in Naruto having 0 chakra. That's like a character in Dragon Ball having 0 ki. That's like a character in Bleach having 0 Reiatsu. But not only is this not an actual detriment to Toji, it's a major benefit. The exclusion of the major abilities of the power system to the benefit of a character like Toji is probably another reason why he's super duper popular in the eyes of the fandom and even beyond the fandom. He's a contradiction to the very world he's established in, and that's very attention grabbing. I can't necessarily think, like, I was trying to think of people who like kind of fit within this too, but no, Toji's super duper rare. Like, how many characters do you know directly contradict their power system? Like, I legit can't think of one on top of my head. I can't think of anyone in Dragon Ball who isn't powerful, or no, who is powerful that doesn't use ki. I can't think of anyone in Naruto who is powerful and doesn't use chakra. I guess you could say like Might Guy and Rock Lee and stuff like that, but still, they use chakra. Like, the whole 8-gate system is based on their chakra network. So it is still there. Even in Bleach, who was strong without Reiatsu? Aizen took a guess and was wrong about Ichigo when he showed up in Dangai. So, like, even then, across the big 3 in Dragon Ball, I don't know about One Piece, I guess, but even then, think about it. Is there a character in One Piece? I'm actually legitimately asking because I still yet to read One Piece. Is there a character in One Piece who is physically extremely powerful, like a top tier in the verse, without haki or without a devil fruit? Is there? I legit don't know. But like, I'm thinking of One Piece top tiers. The Admirals, they all have devil fruits and good haki. The Yonkos, they, except for Shanks, Shanks has really, really good haki, and the rest of them have really, really good devil fruits and really, really good haki. Shoot, even like first and second commanders, they have crazy haki. Like, there's no one that's just a regular dude, or even the opposite of a regular dude, a person with no haki or a person with no devil fruit. That is super duper crazy. But Toji is that. Toji is an inarguably, like, I can't literally think of a list of top 10 characters that does not include Toji in it. Like, I'm thinking of like not just a list in my own head, but lists I've seen. Toji is a super powerful character despite literally contradicting the entire curse system that he runs in. And that's amazing. And another reason why I think he's popular is just because of the impact he has. Like, notably, despite being in the narrative for such a short time period, where Toji really benefits is the fact that he was that like lightning in a bottle scenario. He showed up, he dropped Gojo, made Gojo a deity, and left. That's it. Bro, no time to disappoint. Bro, no time to really develop, I'll be real. He had no time to really exist. He was just like that. Even in Shibuya, when he came back, he was still just like a lightning flash. He was in the series for like 5 chapters. He showed up, beat up the Seance woman, came up, pulled up on Dagon, stabbed Dagon through the head, and then stabbed himself through the head once he was done with Megami. Like, Toji is a extremely quick, extremely high-intensity character. There are no low moments with Toji. And even the tiny little bits of low moments we have upon his introduction only feed directly into the high moments and building that up. So Toji is a character who I can't say, like a lot of other characters have, he has pretty much no low points, except for when he's literally not in the narrative because, you know, he's 6 feet under. So those are my guesses for why people love Toji. If I just had to take some general guesses, but let's see what Broken Ronin has to say.
He commits for a majority of his screen time being downright evil. The Jujutsu Kaisen community just flocks to Toji in droves in a way that is particularly interesting, especially when you consider that he truly only gets shine in one arc. So as a pretty big fan of...
Here's the thing, right? I guess, because that's the thing with Shibuya. I forget, do I have my Googler anywhere? Well, I'm using my Googler right now. But when you think about it, Shibuya is like massive. Like multiple things, like you have Gojo versus the disaster curses, you have Dagon versus Jujutsu High / Nabito, you have Toji versus Dagon, you have Toji versus Megami, you have Sukuna versus Maharaga, you have Haruto versus Maharaga, you have Nobara versus Mahito, you have Todo, Yuji, and not anyone else. Matoto and Yuji versus Manta. Like, Shibuya is super packed. So I guess I get what he means when he says, like, one arc. But I'd still say, like, him showing up and, like, you remove, notably when I think of characters and their impact relative to a story, if I want to say, does a character have a massive impact in this moment? I try to remove them from that narrative. If I can rip a character out of your plot and nothing in the plot changes, I think that's a poorly implemented character. That's how I see it. I don't think you can rip Toji out of Shibuya. Because if you do, then everyone, well, not everyone, but like, I think Sukuna doesn't, like, the manga can't happen. Like, the manga as to now can't happen because Megumi dies to Dagon. Like, even if they escape, I think Jogo just rolls through and then slaughters Megumi. And then if Megumi dies, well, the current fight in the manga that's happening right now can't happen. So you can't remove Toji from Shibuya. So I say he's very important there, because him removing Megumi from that scenario is probably what caused the scenario to go as smoothly as it did. Because when you think about it, if you remove Megumi from that, because here's the thing, either Megumi summons Maharaga against Jogo somehow in that moment. He summons Maharaga against Jogo, and then Sukuna doesn't come and stop Maharaga, and then Megumi dies. Or Megumi just dies. like there's no like win con in this scenario where Sukuna gets to resurrect. Because remember, Jogo showed up since the finger being released by the girls and then left to go take care of that. But if he's fighting Maharaga or he slays Megumi, then Sukuna's just gonna be mad. I don't even think Sukuna would work with Jogo at that point. So Toji's very, very integral to Shibuya, even though once again he's in there like a flash and then he's gone. So I get what he means, but I still think he's very integral too.
Toji myself, I want to break down his character in order to understand just what makes him so likable. When it comes to introducing new characters, first impressions matter. A good first impression can be the difference between a character being regarded as great by the community or a character being hated regardless of their growth after the fact. Sakura is actually a pretty...
That is true. But the interesting thing about first impressions is that they don't always matter. Because, wait, let me rehear what he says real quick.
A good first impression can be the difference between a character being regarded as great by the community or a character being hated regardless of their growth after the fact. Sakura is actually a pretty good example of what...
Okay, so he doesn't speak in absolutes, but I think of this particularly, like the big example of a first impression being a bit off, yet leading to actual benefits for the characters, despite it not being the best first impression, is Escanor from Seven Deadly Sins. If you don't remember how Escanor is introduced, we don't get introduced to Escanor as the big Giga Chad man. We get introduced to Escanor as tiny little man who was scared and shaken and crying in front of the Ten Commandments. But the flip is what allows that to work well. And if I had to say, what I'm guessing that makes Toji work so well is that despite the fact that he's introduced as a bum who cannot remember his own son, it's the flip. It's the flip that you get with Toji. Because looking at Toji, especially when he's first introduced into the manga, you don't actually get to see his physique all that much. He's dressed in like this long sleeve shirt and like these really baggy pants. Like you don't get to see what makes this man so like crazy, where he got his title from. The only thing that could remotely imply that is a scar on his lip, where you're like, oh, okay, so this man's been in some fights. But like, he doesn't actually look that intimidating. He doesn't even look that strong. So in terms of first impressions, I think Toji kind of makes a Escanor-ish one. Sure, is it still better? Yeah, because he's not like crying or scared of anything. But he's introduced as a loser, as a bum. Like legitimately, he's out there betting on races and losing. And he can't remember his own son's name. And speaking of Sakura, I think he's going into the idea that, you know, a lot of people have a negative impression of Sakura just based on how she was introduced. And I don't blame people for that. Notably, I'm mostly indifferent to Sakura. I don't really like her. I don't really dislike her. I don't know. She's a character in Naruto. She's one of the main characters, and I can see why people don't like her for a lot of reasons, because she's one of the main characters, but mostly indifference, but I understand what he means. That first impression, unlike something like Toji's first impression, unlike something like Escanor's first impression, it realistically never gets that flip. And by the time the flip occurs, it's part one being over, and it's Shippuden when she fights Sasori. That is too long of negativity. And I think that's the importance of the flip. If you're going to do this with your characters, at least if Once again, not a writer, not a writer, not a published author, not even a guy with any, like, my degree is in something completely different than literature studies. But in my opinion, if you are writing a character and you want to do a flip first impression, where you introduce them at a low and then flip them to a high, the best way to do it is to make sure there is very little time between that flip. With Escanor, it's only a matter of a chapter or two before he flips into Giga Chad Escanor. For Toji, it's only a matter of like 1 or 2 chapters, once again, before he flips into Giga Chad Toji. So, like, it's there. You do it very, very quickly. If you do something like Sakura, where you introduce negativity and then you keep it, while that would work well for, and I say it kind of does work well in Naruto for a long-term character arc, specifically if you want a good, solid character that people are going to like, you cannot let that first impression linger and set in, because then people are going to think about that character negatively regardless, because you've given them too much time. That's why I'd say, like, preferably, if you're writing something, you kind of want to release it in full, because then your reader, or your, whatever piece of media you're consuming, the person who's consuming that media doesn't have that long to engender their opinions about a character just off their first impression. But for something like Sakura, you introduce her negatively, and then you let your reader sit on that for, what, literal years. Like, when does the Sasori fight happen? I think it's like in the... I do not know my Naruto chapters that well, but I know it's not until part 2. And part 2 is like a solid 300 chapters. Once again, do not have the Google on me. But if that's where I had to take a guess with the reason of bringing up Sakura and talking about first impressions. Let's see what he says what Toji's first impression is. Because I know a lot of people don't consider... Oh, I got hair in my mouth. I know a lot of people don't consider Toji's first impression until he pulls up at the Star Plasma base and Gojo right in the back. But technically his first impression is pretty underwhelming. But let's see.
A terrible first impression will do to your reputation, because despite growing and coming to really appreciate Naruto as a friend and close comrade, she gets a lot of flack because some of her first on-screen actions consisted of just dunking on Naruto, who the audience had already grown attached to. I'm not...
That is also true. That is very... Here's the thing. It's dangerous, but I do kind of like it. It's a risky thing, and I think, unfortunately for Kishimoto, a lot of people didn't like it. But the last thing you want to do when you're writing a character that you hope the audience is going to like. If you're writing a hateable character, write a hateable character. Make them hate on whoever you want. But if you're writing a character that you want the audience to like, do not let that character be mean to other characters that the audience likes. Especially not your protagonist. Especially not your protagonist. And if you are going to do it, once again, in a similar vein to the first impression flip, always do it quickly. You could argue that Nobara, at first, is kind of mean and disrespectful to Yuji. Upon her introduction to the manga, she kind of just clowns on homie. But she sees what Yuji's like, and then that flip happens instantaneously, to the point where people in the fandom only recognize Nobara and Yuji as basically siblings, which I also see them as. So, like, the flip works, and it builds a nice impression. But once again, you had to do it quick. Sakura didn't do it quick. Took too long. A lot of her, even, once again, like he was showing a clip from early part 2. Well, not even early. I think that's a little bit into part 2. But still, Sakura's just yelling at the main character, who people like. And people are not going to like that. People are going to find that annoying, which is why people like Sasuke, because he also found her annoying. But still, be careful whenever you're writing. Be careful, unless you want your character to be hated. Danzo is a well-written character, because Kishimoto wanted you to not like Danzo. So he wrote him like a meanie stupid head. And it works. I'm trying to think of other examples specifically. I think you're not supposed to like Haruta. I don't think anyone has Haruta from JJK and they're like top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40, top 50 characters within JJK. Wanna know why? Because Gege wrote him that way. So it's fine. Just be careful. But let's see what he says with Toji.
And in Close Comrade, she gets a lot of flack because some of her first on-screen actions consisted of just dunking on Naruto, who the audience had already grown attached to. I'm not saying that Sakura would be some fan-favorite character or anything, but I will say that a better first impression could have only helped her standing in the Naruto community. Conversely, Naruto fans love to praise Rock Lee as a character, and in fact...
He's right. All right, like, here's the thing. Rock Lee is only a first, well, to be fair, not entirely. He does have Lee versus Sasuke, then Lee versus Gaara, then Lee versus Kimimaro. But a majority of it, after the fact, is nothing. Bro does nothing for the rest of the series. But people still love the character to this day because of how solid that first impression was, how those first impressions went. So yeah, he's spit. This is literally a perfect comparison.
Often overhype his narrative relevance just because he had a really good introduction and Kishimoto made it clear how cool he was early on. People even think that the story would have been better with Lee as the protagonist almost exclusively because they like his personal theme and because his fights with Sasuke and Gaara are cool. Toji is someone who falls in the latter category, as I think he makes a very good first impression right out the gate, largely in part due to his character design and the initial intrigue behind his character. Just with this first page, Gege is establishing an interesting background narrative that'll be...
That is true. I didn't think about that in regards to Toji's first impression. But that is true. He is introduced as a person being put on to take care of the Star Plasma Vessel. And not only that, he's specifically introduced after multiple people. I'm pretty sure. Once again, I actually don't watch the anime. Shock horror. Me, the guy who's pretty much exclusively talks about manga, does not watch the JJK anime. Unless I haven't read the Gojo's Past Dark fully in a hot minute. I think like a year. But with that being the case, I believe Toji's also introduced after people have already failed to get rid of the Star Plasma Vessel. So since this individual is being given so much attention, more attention than even a whole group, this whole individual panel. And not only that, the mention of the Zenin clan, which if you're reading the manga or watching the anime, is going to light a bulb in your head. Zenin. Like Maki Zenin? Like Megami. Fushiguro. That's the thing. You get the Fushiguro, which will immediately backlink your brain to Megami, but you also get the Zenin, which backlinks your brain to Maki. So you get that intrigue that comes with Toji's first introduction. I forgot about that. But once again, what I mentioned earlier about his character design, look at him right now. Does this look like the buff Giga Chad we know and love? Bro looks bummy. Like, I wish I had a mouse right now. Look at how bummy bro looks. He literally is dressed like... I don't even think I own that outfit. Because even I don't dress like that much of a bum. And I dress pretty bummy. So, like, that's the thing. He still has a fantastic design facial-wise, and like I said, the scar brings intrigue, but there is that mystery that's built into his first impression too, so that is good as well. I didn't even think about that. Bringing up a fantastic point.
Strung along for Toji throughout this arc, and more importantly, he shows off what is a very cool-looking character.
I think this panel alone has done like lasting damage to Toji's character. Personally, I'm in the camp that Toji's a meh father. Like, he's not a good one, but he's not a horrible one. Like, he's not in the landscape of bad anime dads. I don't think Toji's like down there with Sho Tucker. Like, don't get me wrong. But I think this one panel, like, notably, there have been mixed interpretations on this panel on whether or not, like, oh, he's just pretending to not know Megami, or oh, he's like lying or something like that. But essentially, this is part of his first introduction that really does him dirty, like very dirty in terms of his characterization. A lot of people just think of him as a bum, and like, notably, he's a bum. Do not get me wrong, you don't spend all your days gambling at horse races and not raising your kids because of that. Like, you don't. But I think it does leave a lasting mark on his characterization that's not for the good, it's not for the better. I think ultimately, especially considering what he is revealed to have done for Megami later on in the future, giving him an actual place where he could thrive, and on top of that, asking someone who literally executed him to take care of his kid, you can tell there is definitely some care for Toji, and I think a lot of his neglect of Megami comes from his own lack of understanding of parenthood. Because you gotta remember, Toji grew up in an environment where presumably his own parents threw him in a room with cursed spirits, and it kind of expected him to... Toji was not meant to become what he was, what he became. That was pure accident. Toji had no idea how to be a father. And sure, don't get me wrong, even in this time period, 10 years ago, 2006, there have been like how to raise your kid manuals for a while. I can go to any retail store that sells books right now and figure out how to raise a kid if I really need to. So Toji easily could have done that, but I think a lot of Toji's neglect of Megami and Samuki after the loss of their mother comes from his own lack of understanding of how he should interact. I think it's a tragic part of his character. But a lot of just people, and I don't blame people, because once again, this is a lot of conjecture, this is a lot of extrapolation based on what's in the manga rather than what's stated. But a lot of people, due to this part of his first impression, kind of just lock Toji off as, oh, he's bad dad. And he is. He is. Can't say he's not, but I don't think it's entirely his fault. I think there's a bit more nuance behind it. I don't think Toji's just a bad dad who wanted to sell his kid off for some bands. Like I think there is a little bit of extra sauce on that.
Scar and mischievous smile particularly stand out as some of Toji's most recognizable traits, and this continues to be the case all the way up until his character's conclusion. Subsequently, Gege continues to build Toji's character up as this mysterious, lazy, yet weirdly competent assassin, which keeps his intrigue for the audience high. Now, a pretty big, pretty funny elephant in the room when it comes to Toji and why he's liked so much is
BAM! It's on my phone! BAM! It's on my PC! BAM! Google Play Games! BAM! 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 I could do it all day.
well, a lot of the community just finds him attractive, just gonna be straight up.
Okay, fun fact, I exist on the internet. I once again, I don't necessarily say I'm an active part of any sort of fandom. I just read things, I see things, I talk about things. I can't say it's my job yet. I would love to make this my full-time job, but it's not exactly my job yet. But I do, whenever I scroll, I am looking for content to talk about. And the insane deluge of diabolically down atrocious individuals of any background, any location, any origin that have listed the absolutely horrifying things they would do to this man has me concerned more than you could ever know. I am genuinely afraid of some of y'all. And I know some of you exist in my comment section. Trust me, I see it. I've seen it. But it's usually not on this platform. Because once again, Toji has not been a major part of the narrative. Thusly, a lot of his fans haven't had any reason to come into my YouTube comment section. But fun fact, Toji's a pretty prominent feature on my other major platform, which is TikTok. Go follow me down there. That got the TikTok if you want more daily pencil content. But regardless of the plug, I've seen it. Some of you are diabolical. And by some of you, I mean a lot. Like, legitimately, it concerns me. It genuinely concerns me how down bad you are for this piece of pixels. He is not real. He is not. The amount of, oh my lord. I've been scarred. I've been scarred by Toji fans. Because some of you are disgusting. There's liking characters and then there's being animals. Some of you are animals. Like, it's funny until it isn't. Because some of y'all are serious. And that's what scares me. Like, heavens forbid you're a Toji cosplayer. Go to any person who's like cosplay Toji and remotely looks like the character. Go into that comment section. You will be scarred like me. You will see things that you wish you had never seen. You shall wake up drenched in sweat in the middle of the night because you've seen what I have seen. So if you want to stay pure, don't do it. But he's right. A lot of people just find the man attractive. Once again, I don't think that's off his first impression. Like, look at this man. Look at this. He looks like a bum. I don't know. This first fit for Toji does not do anything for his physique. Once again, I think that's part of the flip. I think it's part of the, oh, he looks bummy. Oh, sweet mother of mercy, he's jacked. Like, it's got, like you know, the whole sleeper build phenomenon? I don't fully get that because I don't have one. But, like, I feel like it's that with Toji. Like, he comes off as a guy who's like, he's in shape. He's not, like, rotund. But you don't get the hench, like, how they literally did him in the, like, they had him, like, hold on, let me see if I can replicate it. They, like, in the intro, they literally had him being like bro, like, they knew what they were doing. Like, Mappa knew what they were doing in the intro. Like, obviously, he's hench, don't get me wrong, but they do be dragging it a little bit. But once again, I think it's all part of the flip that builds into why people love Toji's character, on top of the fact that he's just a good-looking dude.
A pretty big, pretty funny elephant in the room when it comes to Toji and why he's liked so much is well, a lot of the community just finds him attractive, just gonna be straight up. You could technically consider this a branching benefit of a good character design, and while it is, I think it's important to acknowledge this factor because not all good character designs result in a character that looks good in the conventional sense. Take Mahito for instance. But I would say that fits for his character, and in the end results in his design being really good, despite him being ugly. In Toji's case, he gets the benefit of both worlds. He looks cool and he's hot. So he covers as many bases as possible when it comes to his design. Now, going just one layer deeper beyond the surface, I think that one reason Toji is one of the most well-liked JJK characters is particularly because of his attitude and personality. This guy has committed some straight-up devious acts, with his most prominent one.
Toji's one of the rare exceptions where I feel like devious is an understatement. Like, we all know what Toji did. Like, how old was Riko Amanai? How old was she? Like, is that still, like, when I hear the word devious, I think of like a kid going into the cookie jar, or like taking $20 from their dad's wallet, or like something like that. That's what I think is devious. Like, you little devious fiend. Diabolical is the more appropriate word for Toji. That man has done diabolical things for the low price of like $2. I forget what he was actually supposed to be paid. But like, I don't, like, golly, I don't know how the man sleeps at night. Well, he didn't sleep at night for much longer, but still, man's a monster. He's just flat out evil. Like, don't get me wrong, he's just flat out evil. Like, once again, despite me like being a Toji defender on multiple fronts, like on the scaling front and on the character front, like I'm never gonna say the man's not a villain. Like, he is straight up an antagonist, and like, no, I can't even say antagonist. He is a villain. He's an evil human being. There's no justifying it. Like, it's not like Riko did anything to him. It's not like Riko came from a line of people. I mean, I guess you could say, but Riko wasn't even really part of the Jujutsu world as far as I know. She was brought into it by the nature of her biology. So like, he literally just did it for the bands. And like, to be fair, I know many people who would do many diabolical things for the bands, but I don't think any of them would go that far. So Toji is just evil.
Being the murder of a middle schooler. So it's easy to see how if Gege didn't get the balance of Toji's character right, this guy could have been one of the most hated characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, rather than being generally well liked as he is now. On top of just shooting Riko, he also took a knife to the beloved Jujutsu Kaisen duo, and near everybody kinda just shrugs their shoulders at him because, well, he's cool. Gege actually does this a lot with his antagonists, where he'll just make them do really bad, really heinous things that in many other scenarios would lead to them being hated, but he just gives them such an insane amount of charisma and gives them just ridiculous bars so that they are the coolest people ever while like massacring a bunch of people.
I think this, he's right. This is common across JJK antagonists. If you'll notice, there's pretty much not a single JJK antagonist that has like a serious, crazy next level goal or plan. Think about it. The big antagonist of the series, Mahito. What was Mahito's goal? Become a true human, I guess, but really live life and just keep on slaying people, because that's what he enjoyed. That's all he kind of did. For Kenjaku, the man straight up admitted he's only doing all of this. He literally took back shots, was pregnant for 9 months, and gave birth for something that he doesn't even consider that important. He just wants to see what a thing that's made of all the cursed energy in Japan is looking like. And he wants to see if it has a funny face or not. That's not that deep. Even Sukuna, the malevolent war deity of 1,000 years past, is just a dude who likes to eat people. There's nothing complex. There's nothing crazy. Toji literally did it for the bands. None of these characters are that deep. And it allows for like less posturing, less like I am holier than thou. Notably, a big issue that I personally have, I know I'm diverging a lot here, but a big issue I personally have was Xehanort. in Kingdom Hearts 3 is that he tried to make it too deep. I loved Xehanort. I loved Xemnas. I loved Ansem in the Kingdom Hearts games because their plans were not that deep. They just wanted ultimate power. Why not? Ansem wanted it, 'cause why not? Xemnas was like, I want a heart, supposedly. And then Xehanort and BBS was like, well, shoot. I just want to know what it'd be like when it'd be like. You know what I'm saying? Like, once again, in a very similar vein to current Kenjaku, he's just doing it for the memes. And that allows for a lot of their character time to be built, establishing them as charismatic, as these nice, cool, kind of casual individuals. And that's what a lot of the JJK villains have. They're people first, villains second. And I think while these people do heinous things, it allows for that disconnect where you can fully acknowledge that Toji is a terrible human being. But he's still cool though. Kenjaku is a horrid monster that has ruined the lives of probably millions of people. Still funny though. Geto Suguru is constantly considered the baby girl of the fandom, despite the fact that he literally wanted to wipe out all non-sorcerers. But all, he's Gojo's boyfriend. Like, legitimately. Gege, and admittedly, I even think Nomura in Kingdom Hearts did some masterclass work with dissecting these characters down the middle, where their villainy is not their entirety. That's where I think some characters in other major manga that are major spoilers, which I won't talk about, but that's where I think they fail. And even Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts 3 fails. The moment you try to make their goals lofty and high and crazy like that, you lose that sort of relatability. That's what a lot of the JJK villains in particular have. That insane relatability, and also just a lot of cool factor. Like seeing Toji up it against a literal dragon is metal. Seeing him tear through that same dragon with a sword is metal. Seeing him pull up on the strongest and mollywop them is metal. Like, everything's just metal. So, like, it really builds
Aito and Sukuna jump out as the most popular examples of this, and I think Toji's not really all that different from them. From the jump, it's made pretty clear that Toji is not your stereotypical assassin-type character. He's smart and seems good at his job, sure, but he also has this air of carelessness, goofiness, and general idiocy that balances the serious nature of his actions quite well. Betting on a track race while talking strategy is just such a Toji thing to do, and it adds another dimension to his character, albeit a pretty unserious one. Toji being...
And once again, he's right. It's the balance that comes with that. It's the ability to make sure that your characters are characters first. That's where I'd say a series like My Hero Academia struggles with at times, where a character is so far detached from anything but their morals and ideology that when you ask about the character, they are literally summed up by their morals and ideology. And while that's fine for simpler characters, for things like major villains, major main characters, you typically don't want your characters like that. You want your reader or whatever, once again, whatever piece of media you're consuming, you want your audience to believe that there's a history to the character, to believe that there are layers. Toji is not just an assassin. He's a guy who likes to gamble. He loves the thrill. Like, a lot of my extrapolation whenever I do the opens of my versus battles, the reason the opener to Toji versus Kashima was like 9 minutes long is because I could extrapolate so much from Toji's character just based on what Gege gives us, because there's so much character there. But remember, once again, Toji's in the narrative for like 10% of it. You could add up all of Toji's screen time, it could probably be like 5 chapters. Like, being real. Like, being completely real. Because how often does he actually appear? Like, he doesn't even realistically get full chapters to himself. Let's be generous and say 10. Even 10 chapters is not a 10% of the narrative. I think it's barely 5. It's a little under 5, actually. So if you were to compile all of Toji's screen time, you would probably get less than 200 pages. Out of a much, much, much larger manga. But, even still, Gege was very good at optimizing Toji's screen time to make sure that there were layers to this onion. And that's why we like him.
A hired hitman is something that is framed as a necessity. This guy clearly is a good-for-nothing just based on how he's described countless times in this arc, and he's only really good at killing, which resulted in the Sorcerer Killer moniker for him, but this isn't framed as some great tragedy immediately. In fact, at first, it's mostly played for laughs that the guy considered a jobless bum is also the only guy qualified enough to take Gojo down at this point in the story. Now, later on in the arc, we see that Toji had his pride and personal reasons for doing what he did, which definitely gives an added layer of depth to his character while still allowing for his pettiness to be pretty funny. But from that first impression perspective, it's clear that which definitely gives an added layer of depth to his character while still allowing for his pettiness to be pretty funny. But from that first impression,
Yo, why does anime food look so good, dog? I don't even know what that is. I want to eat it, though. That thing looks scrumptious. I have no... I ate today, too, so like, I don't even know why, but like, that looks scrumdiddlyumptious. Give me that. Told you don't need that. You can't afford that, bro. Let me eat it.
It's clear that Toji kinda just does what he wants and kills people because he's good at it, not for any particular grand reason. It also doesn't hurt that this guy is just...
What did I mention? It's that lack of a grand reason, that lack of a grand plan. It's that kind of human nature. Why do you do things? Why are you watching this video? Hopefully because you enjoy watching stuff with me and like we have good conversations and stuff like that. But like, I'll admit, I don't have a grand plan. I want to live and enjoy my life, whether that be through watching and making videos or sleeping. Like legitimately, I don't know. I don't have that high of an ambition. My best friend, he doesn't have much of a grand plan. Neither does my other one. She doesn't have much of a grand plan either. We're just existing. And that like inherent humanity is what makes us human. And once again, the layers to it. Toji is not just an assassin. He's an assassin who is broken by his past. He's an assassin with a kid. He's an assassin with certain ideas and morals, how flimsy they may be. And he's an assassin with pride. There are layers to the character. There is the overarching role he has in the narrative as a villain, as an antagonist, as the guy who made Gojo Satoru a deity. But there's still Toji the man beneath all that. And I think that's good. That's how you do a good character. If I can describe your character in one term, one phrase, one sentence, and do nothing else about that, I don't think that's the best of characters. But with Toji, you can't describe him in one sentence. There's a whole lot to him. And I think that's great.
So sure of himself the entire arc, and that confidence just shows on screen so blatantly that it's kinda nuts. That brazen, devil-may-care attitude is just pretty wildly appealing, so when he's built up for all of hidden inventory as that guy, while also being a pretty funny and entertaining person to see on screen, it makes his arrival all the more exciting. Speaking of which, for all of my fellow meatheads who love turning off their brains and just seeing a cool fight, it's clear that Toji kinda just does what he wants and kills people because he's good. Confidence just shows on funny and entertaining person to see on screens and just seeing a cool fight. Toji from that point of view is just cool from the moment he stabs Gojo till the time he exits the series. He's just on demon timing as soon as he gets on the battlefield. There's no pot.
Yeah. Honestly, from a simple, like, well, as he put it, I like anime fights because anime fights are cool. Toji is just that. But once again, I think what makes it work even better, because we have a lot of characters like that in JJK. Like, Itadori Catch These Hands Yuji is that. Heck, Megami is that. The entire Culling Games is kind of that, when you really think about it. But I think it's like the fact that he comes in specifically as an opposite. Like, rolls up on one of the strongest sorcerers as the Sorcerer Slayer. And just absolutely works him. I think that adds that little
String about how what he's actually doing is right. There's no complex curse technique that needs to be explained, and there's no hesitance to just get to work and get the job done. Now, don't get me wrong, a morally great character can and has been done well in this series. A sorcerer with a complex curse technique can and has been done well in this series, but sometimes it's just nice to see someone who utterly breaks those conventions and just fights for the bag. Toji's a confident character who... Toji
is not only an inspiration. Should I say? I shouldn't say this. I'm gonna say it. Toji's not just an inspiration for you to go get in the gym. Toji's an inspiration for you to go chase a bag. Always chase a bag, ladies and gentlemen. If Toji's able to do what he's able to do and able to go to sleep at night, known as what he does for what he does, there's no reason that you should not be chasing a bag. I chase a bag, Toji chases a bag, you should chase a bag. Come chase a bag with us today. It really is, because, yeah, it's once again true. It goes back to the simplicity. A big motivator for all of humanity, because we kind of need to live, is to get a bag. You gotta eat. You gotta have a place to stay. You gotta be able to put clothes on your back. And how do you do that? You go chase a bag. Whether that bag be you're a young kid who wants to just go out and maybe get some new shoes or buy a new console for yourself because your parents are going to get it for you, go chase that bag. Go work at any sort of local area that'll hire you. If you're a 50-year-old business executive that's trying to move into that new McMansion that just went on the market, you got to go chase that bag for that mansion. Regardless, life, after a point, like literally, I'd say once you are able to work, well, not always. I'd say once you hit adulthood specifically, but like most people, people start working in their teens. Your life is centered around the bag because you kind of can't do anything without the bag. Like people say money can't buy happiness, but trust me, you're going to be a lot happier on the back of a 350-foot yacht than you are going to be in a box. So like money may not buy happiness, but it sure don't hurt. So I understand that idea of like, yeah, told you just being a dude who's in it for the money. While it's shallow, it's kind of sad on what he's willing to do for a bag. Makes sense, because a lot of people do things, diabolical things, dastardly things that probably have worse impact than what Toji does. For that,
deserves the confidence that he has, but he's also a particularly cautious guy when it comes to fighting Gojo. He knows exactly who and what he's dealing with, and the fact that he's aware while also being confident just makes him seem so much more intelligent and overall cool. Anyways, I think the best way to summarize Toji's appeal, at least in the context of combat,
and I think that is true. That's an aspect of Toji that even I don't really talk about that much. Once again, I don't talk about Toji that much on here, but I do like that he is really, really smart. Like it's hard to see it half the time because he's not a kenjaku, he's not a Altoto, he's not a Xehanort or anything like that. He's not like a big brain, like, oh, one of the main appeals of this character is how fat their brain is. Like, no, he's a smart dude. And even when he's reduced to nothing more than an instinctual beast, he's still intelligent. He files down Playful Cloud because he realizes that blunt force won't work as well against Dagon. You really need to pierce it. So he instinctively goes for the strongest person there. Quote unquote. Well, I guess technically Megami was the strongest person there, but he does that and then he takes him outside so he can have more room to fight and more room to battle. Like there are subconscious measures to Toji, and Toji actively, consciously doing extreme things that are extremely intelligent, and that's a nice part of his character. Once again, layers to the onion. That's why I think Toji works so well.
When Toji fights, really well. It look cool. Now, as simple as that may sound, and as dumb as I intended to make it sound, that is a huge factor in whether or not a character, specifically in a battle shonen, will truly be well-liked or not. It's basic and it's somewhat shallow, and maybe you could argue that there are more things to a character than that, but when we're talking...
Well, I bet he's about to say this, but he's right. Specifically within the context of a shonen manga, if you are going to introduce a character, there are two things that you need to do. One, you need to make sure that character can fight. And number two, you better make sure they can fight good, because if they can't, notice what happens. Think of almost any character. Well, here's the thing, right? Heck, I can't even say that, because notably I know a lot of people who don't like certain characters that I was about to mention. But think about every popular battle manga ever. Which characters do you remember the most? Do you remember the characters that fight and fight good? Or do you remember the characters that, like, they don't fight but they're smart? Or they don't fight but they do fight but they don't fight that well? Or they do fight sometimes but not all the... No, you remember the characters who, when they fight, Oh, they fight. Like they have a really good time with that. And that's one of the things about shonen manga in particular, or battle manga, because they're romance shonen. Like, you aren't going to read Blue Box for the fisticuffs. But, like, that's the thing. When you're writing a battle manga, one of your first priorities, especially when introducing a major antagonist or even a major protagonist, is they better be able to fight good. You better be able to make it look cool. And while it's simple, it's very easy to do. Look at Yuji catch these hands Itadori. Man has not had a curse technique in over 230 chapters, yet he's still one of the coldest fighters in the entire series. It's still not always too simple. So it still is an art form, being able to make your characters not only fight, but fight good. They need to fight good.
Now, a pure mass appeal, it's true.
Please.
If you look good, you fight good, and your personality's cool, you're probably just going to be well-liked. And I mean, Toji's also a participant of some of the best fights in the series, full stop. And I would say that this propels his widespread love to new heights. Toji is clearly different, and both the anime and manga do an absolutely amazing job of making sure that you as the viewer know that he's not like most other characters in the series. His speed is conveyed perfectly, and the ferociousness of each strike lets you know that this guy is just a different animal from every other character in the series.
And that's, once again, I keep bringing up this whole, like, he's the opposite of the series, that's why he's so well liked, but I'm gonna keep hammering that point. It is the way he fights that feels so vicious and savage relative to a lot of the other sorcerers. That's why even when Maki starts to subconsciously or accidentally embody Toji, when Momo is asked at the end of the Tokyo 1, the fight between Akari and Kashimo, when asked about Maki, she's like, oh, she's turned into a monster. Because that's what Toji and Maki fight like once they're liberated, or Toji always fought like. They don't fight elegantly. There's no real, I mean, there is style, there is an understanding, there is combat skill there, but specifically the anime does it really, really well from what little bit I've seen of it, but even the manga portrays it super duper well, where they're kind of like wraiths. They don't fight in a way that's like visual or elegant or even like bombastic in the same ways that a lot of other characters fight. Even they fight different than their fellow hands-only fighter, Yuji Itadori. Yuji fights with these like solid fighting styles, like he does things. I don't know. That, like, I don't know fighting styles. But Yuji fights in these like linear specific patterns that work really, really well and still make for good fights. But Toji and Maki, especially considering they're one of the few consistently weapon-wielding characters in the series, they stand out in how they move, the swings, the flips, the wielding of the inverted spear. Toji once again upping it against a dragon. Like, these moments stand out because they're so few and far between. And I think that's why
Lighted out eyes and devilish
well,
grin keeps those charisma points up for Toji in the midst of a fight. And I just gotta take a second to applaud Gege because he just really knows what he's doing when it comes to making an antagonist. Many times you could argue that they don't have the philosophical or ideological depth that you can find in other antagonists in other series, but are JJK villains fun to see cook. Toji in particular is really thorough with his mission and has some lines. Like, bro, standing over the body of Gojo Satoru, teenager or not, and saying that you are just starting to remember how to do your job is insane. Like, it's actually ridiculous that a fight with Gojo was something to just kind of scrape the rust off.
I hate you. I'm not even going to add this. I'm just going to tell you. At this point in the manga, I was still super duper confused. Like, once again, I was consuming JJK in a very similar way that I was consuming Blue Lock. I think I saw a little piece of the anime. I was like, oh, this seems neat. And I went to the manga and I read it all. So when I was going through the Gojo's past arc, without having read Volume 0, by the way, I had no idea who Geto even was. Like, I think I glazed over the fact that he was mentioned to be responsible for the Night Parade of 100 Demons. So I was still super duper confused. So, like, when I saw Toji do this, I was like, wait, is Gojo gone? What is Itadori gonna do? I still remember that genuine confusion in my head. And yeah, and it's just a really cold moment where he's just posted up over the strongest, who even at this time in the narrative,
the gun on a dragon is also
that's crazy.
Just crazy hard. I mean, I know it's become kind of a meme or whatever for, like, especially manga fans, but this is some real life pulled a gun on like a cursed spirit dragon. What more do you want from this guy? Really? On top of all of this, he tells a curse that she's not his type before slicing it and Geto up, then throws salt in the wound by cooking Geto for being a loser in spite of being blessed with cursed energy and a cursed technique. Toji all around is just a really fun presence for the story, and all I'm doing to gas Toji up is ignoring the narrative nuance that his character presents. He's funny, he looks cool, he acts cool, and he fights cool. Yeah. All of this on its own would be enough for me, and probably a majority of the Jujutsu Kaisen fan base, but I haven't even scratched the surface on what Toji's personal story is and how that deeply affects the quality of his character. And to be honest, that could be a video in and of itself. Actually, if you guys want to see that Toji character breakdown in the future, subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when I upload. I have a ton of JJK content coming out this season, so if you're interested, you can check out this playlist here. If this video does good enough, we may get a 30-minute Toji analysis, who knows? But in any case, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.
All right. Oh no. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Horror, Broken Ronin, had a really good video. Yeah, obviously this one's worthy. And I agree with everything he said. Looks cool, fights cool, is handsome. It's kind of just like that. Yeah, Toji is a really beloved character. For those surface reasons alone, like notably he is right. You could drop like a whole hour analysis on Toji's character. He may be cooking it. I'm in the kitchen right now. I already have a script. So many scripts. There's so many scripts I need to sit down and write. But there's so many videos like this that I want to talk about. But yeah. You can cook endlessly with Toji's character. Just like Gege cooked. Gege hopped in the kitchen and was just start whipping it up deviously and deliciously. So 100%. Yeah, I agree with literally everything he said. Like I said, I mean, there's some things like I would add on. Like I don't think his first impression is the best in the entire series, but I do think the flip of the first impression works really, really well. I think the flip of his entire character works really, really well. And yeah, that's why people love Toji. It's why I love Toji. And I like the layers. The layers of Toji is something that I'm going to go more in depth on my own video. I already started to go into a little bit here, but let me in the kitchen just a little bit more. However, thank you guys so much for watching. Put into like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notification bells so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, if you want to check out the original video, please do. It'll be linked in the description down below. Go support Broken Ronin. I mean, if you found me, probably know who Broken Ronin is, but please go check him out anyway. Fantastic channel, makes JJK content way more consistently than I do, and overall has just really, really quality content. So please go check him out. Also, I do have a Patreon below, where you support for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dago the Pencil, writing off.